You come down the cellar steps in the second week of March, the way you have all winter, to fetch supper up out of the crock. There has been a warm spell, 3 or 4 soft days that felt like a blessing after so much cold, and you did not think much about it. You lift the plate off the top of the crock, and the smell rises before your hand does. Not the clean, cold smell of meat that is kept. Something else. Something slick and sour underneath. A low copper smell. Like a handful of old pennies held too long. And your hand pulls back fast before your head is even caught up. You look down into the crock, and the meat has gone gray at the edges and shining wrong. A wet sheen that no good pork ever wore. And you know. You already know. There was the better part of a hog in there. 40 pounds, maybe closer to 50. The loin and the shoulder you cut and packed with your own 2 hands back in the clean cold of December. You added up standing there in the dark because you cannot help it. That was half a year of Sunday dinners. That was the meat that was supposed to carry your table from now until the garden came in. At what a whole hog costs you these days, $4 a pound and better on the hoof. That is real money laid out and lost, $40 and $50 of it and more. And now you are carrying it back up the steps to throw to the dogs because there is nothing else to be done with it. 1 warm week, that is all it took. 1 warm week to undo an entire winter's work. And here is the part that will sit on your chest longest once the smell is faded and the crock is scrubbed. The fix was right there. It was on the same shelf. There was an old way to hold that meat, a plain method somebody worked out 300 years back for this exact stretch of the year, this exact soft, warm week that comes early and fools you. And it would have carried that pork clean through to summer without so much as a cold cellar to help it. The knowledge was not far away. It was not locked up anywhere. It just was not standing there in the cellar with you at the moment you needed it, and nobody was there to say, no, not that crock. This one, do it this way instead. So let me take that weight off you first before we go one step further. You were never shown. That is the whole of it. You did not fail at something you were taught because you were never taught it. Most folks your age never were. The way of it is that the woman who truly knew these things, who could walk into a cellar in March and read a crock of meat the way you read the weather, is most often 3 generations back from where you are standing now. Her hands are gone, and the knowing went with them, and it skipped right over your mother and skipped over you. And none of that is any fault of yours. I saw it plain just this past spring, close enough to reach out and touch. A young neighbor wife, newly keeping her own house, standing over the crock, exactly like the one I have been telling you about. Her face doing the same math yours would do. The tears held back hard, because there is no time to cry over spoiled meat when supper still has to come from somewhere. And not a quarter mile down the same lane, there's an older woman, well past 80 now, who has not lost a single pound of meat to spoiling in 40 years. Not 1 pound. Not in the warm springs. Not in the long summers before the garden gives. Now let me tell you, it is not because she has anything you do not have. She has no cold machine humming in the corner. Nothing you could not put your hands on this very week. What she has is 12 plain ways to beat the spoiling. 12 old methods she keeps in her head. The way you keep the Lord's Prayer. And she reaches for the right one the way you reach for the right spoon, without even looking. She lost meat too once when she was young. And then somebody older than her stood in a cellar and showed her. It cost her nothing but attention, and attention is the one thing nobody ever thought to teach you. It cost her nothing but attention, and attention is the one thing nobody ever thought to teach you. So let me sit with you a while and teach it. The way my mother taught me over a crock of salt when I was small. My name is Sadie, and I've stood at the butchering table every November since I was 9 years old. I do not swing the knife. The kill is the men's work, a 2-day frolic where the neighbors come and the fires burn before daylight. What is mine is the sausage and the seasoning, the racks in the smokehouse, the lard kettle bubbling on the stove, and every jar that comes down the cellar steps. That is a woman's country, and I know it the way you know your own kitchen in the dark. Now let me be honest with you before I count a single method, because the title on this video promises a great deal. These 12 ways keep meat safe and keep it cold with no wire in the wall and no motor humming in the corner. But hear me plain, this is cold storage without a machine, not a magic that makes everything last forever. Some of it holds for years and some of it holds for weeks, and I will tell you which is which as we go. And one of these 12, I will not soften it, must follow a printed chart down to the very minute, or it will hurt someone you love. I would rather lose your trust today than earn it dishonestly. So we begin. The first way is dry salt curing a ham. You pack the whole ham in coarse dry salt, a little brown sugar worked in with your hands, and you let the salt draw the water out slowly. The old measure is roughly a 1.5 to 2 days of salt contact for every pound the ham weighs. After that comes weeks of resting, the salt settling deep, and then 2 months to 12 months hanging in the cool. Here is what your own hand can tell you. In the beginning, the meat gives under your thumb like fresh flesh. When the cure has taken, it firms and pushes back and stops giving. And that is the ham telling you it is becoming something that will keep. Now let me show you the second way, which is the wet brine, what my grandmother called the sweet pickle cure. Instead of dry salt, you make a cold salt brine, sugar, and spice stirred in, and you sink the meat down under it completely. No piece breaking the surface. It stays submerged 5 to 10 days in the spring house, where the water runs near 38 to 40 degrees, cold as a cellar in March. And the tell here is a thing you see when you cut. When the cure has reached all the way to the bone, the very center of the meat darkens through. No pale raw stripe left in the middle. That dark heart means it is done. The third way is the one that gives our meat its soul, and that is cold smoking in the smokehouse. Once the meat is cured, you hang it high over a low smoldering wood fire, never a hot blaze, just a slow breathing smoke that curls up around it for hours, and for the heaviest work for days. The smoke lays a fine skin of its own protection on the surface and dries it further still. You will know it by 2 things your eyes and fingers cannot mistake. The color deepens to a burnished mahogany, richer than any paint, and the skin turns dry and faintly tacky under your fingertip, no longer wet, no longer soft. That is the smokehouse setting its seal. Now let me tell you something that took me years to learn at my own mother's elbow, watching good, careful women lose meat they had worked hard to save. But hanging the meat is the easy part, and knowing the very hour it is truly ready is where most good families still go wrong. But hanging the meat is the easy part, and knowing the very hour it is truly ready is where most good families still go wrong. So let me stay close to the crock and the canner with you, because these next 4 are the deepest handwork of the whole winter, and every one of them rewards a patient woman and punishes a hurried one. The 4th way is corned beef, And I will be honest with you before I show you a thing. This is a general American way, an Irish American farm way that drifted into plain kitchens like ours, and I cannot tell you it was born Amish. But we've made it a long time. I take a good beef brisket and lay it down in a strong salt and spice brine, and it rests submerged 5 to 10 days where the cold holds steady, near 38 degrees, the spring house cool, or the cellar in deep winter. You know it is corned when the color has gone through even and the meat feels firm clear to the middle, not soft in the center. Now let me bring you to the 5th way, the sausage and the sweet bologna that Lebanon County made famous. I grind the meat, I season it, and here is the part I will say, slow and plain. You must cure it with a commercial cure mix measured at the ratio printed right on the package, and never ever freehand old saltpeter by eye. The safe amount and the amount that harms sit too close together to guess. With the cure done right, I stuff it into casings and hang it in the smokehouse over a low smoldering fire that I tend for hours and sometimes days. It is ready when the casing has darkened and dried tight, and the whole house smells of sweet smoke. The 6th way is rendering lard and potting meat under its fat. I cook the meat down, gentle, pack it in a crock, and pour the hot rendered fat over top so it seals every bit of air away as it cools white and firm. It is a beautiful thing to lift the lid on. But hear me clearly. This is not a forever method the way a dry cured ham is. Potted meat under fat is short keeping, a few weeks only, and it must stay root cellar cold the whole time. Treat it as cold storage, not a shelf you forget. Now let me set the pressure canner on the cook stove, because the 7th way is the one method that carries no folklore at all. I fill my jars with meat and seal them, and I drive that canner by wood heat or propane clear up to 240 degrees, holding it 75 to 100 minutes by the size of the jar, at 10 to 15 pounds of pressure by how high your land sits. Only a pressure canner reaches that heat. A boiling water bath will not ever. And this is the plainest truth I own. This is not a guess it step. You match a research chart exactly, or you risk botulism, which you cannot see or smell. So I keep my chart pinned by the stove and I follow it like scripture. Now let me talk money at this kitchen table, because these methods pay. A whole hog at hanging weight runs you roughly $3.50 to $5.50 a pound, conventional, and it will vary by your region and your pig. A processing package that cures and smokes it for you was quoted to me near $7.95 a pound finished. That gap, that markup is what you keep in your own apron when you do your own curing, your own smoking, your own canning. On the sausage and the corned beef alone, curing at home instead of buying it back cured saves you real dollars every single pound. And so the salt, the smoke, the fat, and the sealed jar each hold a different corner of that hog. Those 4 carry a whole hog clear through the year. And after that, the cold of the season itself carries the rest. Those 4 carry a whole hog clear through the year. And after that, the cold of the season itself carries the rest. So let me bring you the last few ways. The ones that use up what would spoil first and stretch every scrap. Number 8 is jerky. And I want you to hear the 2 temperatures plain, because folks get this backward. First, you heat the strips through to 160 degrees to kill anything living in the meat. Only then do you dry them at a steady 130 to 140 degrees, 4 to 8 hours until they are brittle. With pork or wild game especially, you heat treat to a safe temperature first and do not trust the drying alone to make them safe. The tell is simple. A finished strip snaps when you bend it. It does not fold over soft. If it bends, it is not done, and back it goes. Number 9 is pickling in a vinegar brine. This is where the odd cuts go, the pig's feet, a bit of leftover sausage, the pieces saved back from butchering day that would otherwise be lost. You cook them through, then sink them in a sharp vinegar brine and set them down cold in the cellar. Kept cool, they hold a few weeks and up to a couple of months, tart and firm and ready. Now let me give you number 10, scrapple and head cheese souse. When the head meat and the little scraps and all that rich broth come off the butchering, you boil them down and thicken with cornmeal and buckwheat, then pour it into loaf pans to set. Understand me clearly. This is not long keeping. You hold it cold and you eat it soon, because its whole purpose is to use up the most perishable pieces fast while they are at their best. That dish came over with our people from the Rhine-Palatinate, settlers who landed near Philadelphia beginning in 1683, and it feeds us still. Now, I would truly love to hear from you. Did your family keep an ice house or a spring house on the home place? And if you did, tell me down below what you stored down in that cold, the crocks and the jars and the meat you tucked away. I read them all. Next time, I'm going to show you the one I promised, how I can a whole hog in one day on a wood cook stove with no electricity, from the first jar filled to the last lid that seals with a good clean ping. That is the natural next step right after today's canning. So come back and stand at the stove with me. Put your meat up while the world is cold. Tend it faithfully while it hangs in a plain pantry. Will feed your family long after the garden has gone to sleep.